difficult for me. And she's like, difficult for you? She's like, I've got to marry some dude I don't even want. Even though that was a lie, and she knew it when she said it, that she was lying. And she's like, I've got to do this to try and save the family. And this is what you're doing? You're still trying to just keep digging us further into debt. And her mom's like, I'm sorry, okay? And she's like, oh my gosh. So she walks away from mom. She takes off. And she goes to in another room. She's sorting through it, and her sister comes to her, and her sister's like, we gotta talk. She's like, you've been kind of avoiding me lately, but we've gotta talk. And she's like, okay, talk about what? What do you want? Do you not see I'm dealing with this? What do you want? She's like, you can't go through with this. And she was like, yeah, I kind of do. She's like, no, you don't understand. You can't do this. And she's like, why? And she says, because in order for Royce to get on the board, you have to bang him in front of the other board members. And so immediately Maris is like, okay, that's a lie. Where did you get that? You just come on, that's just a rumor. And she's like, no, one of the board members, one of her friends was a babysitter for one of the board members. And one night the wife came in, she was drunk, and she was like, I can't believe you just let them do that to me, and you just sit there and you let them watch us. I can't believe it. And she was like, that doesn't mean that. She was drunk. She could have been talking about anything. She's like, no, she was talking about that. And so then she goes in to describe that year prior. Remember, I had stated, Emily and Royce were supposed to be together. So they went out on a date, but it was horrible. They had no type of chemistry. And she told Royce what she had heard. And Royce was like, that's not true. And was like, where did you find that? Where did you hear that from? Like, and was trying to find out so much. So she knew there had to be some type of truth to it, because otherwise he wouldn't have wanted to know so bad. And so Maris is like, you know what? I'll just talk to Royce about it and we'll go from there. So the next time she never really gets a chance to see Royce to ask him about that. Because after that, she, it's time for the party. I think the party was like the next day. And so she's getting ready. Alice is helping her. And then Vance, which is Royce's older brother, he comes in and he's like, hey, Royce wants to see you. And she's like, all right. So as they're walking down, he was like, whoa. He's like, I'm so glad this is you and not your sister. And she said, why you say that? He's like, because I had the biggest crush on Emily. He's like, this would have been like super weird. And she's like, oh, wow, And so she goes into Royce and, he asks her if she's okay. She's like, I'm good, And he breaks out a black box. And when he opens it, she starts to cry. And he's like, oh, my God, are you okay? Well, he had gotten her that Harry Winston necklace back. He had bought it from Costello's and was gifting it back to her. And she was like, oh my God, that's so sweet. Thank you. You don't understand. This meant so much to my family. This was a family heirloom. And he was like, well, tell me about it. And she goes on to tell him about how it came from, her grandmother and blah, blah, blah. And so he says, I'm going to tell you something. And you can't tell anybody about it. He was like, and I'm going to give you an out. And she's like, if this is about us having to bang in front of the board, I already know. And he's like, I have been not able to sleep at night because I was terrified to tell you and I couldn't tell you. And she's like, yeah, well, Emily just told me yesterday about it. And he's like, and you're still willing to do it? And she said, yeah, I'll do it. And so he gives her another out. And he says, listen, I will give you the $5 million. You can have the necklace. He was like, but like, you don't have to go through with this. He was like, because I'm telling you now, he's like, I'm playing the end game. There's a lot of things I want to do, and I'm willing to do anything to get them. And he's like, I'm going to say things that are cruel to you sometimes. He's like, I'm going to lie to you. You're not going to be able to tell if I'm telling the truth or not a lot of the times. He was like, but I have to do that in order to get to my goal. He was like, are you still in it? And Maris is like, yep, still in it. So he was about to tell her something else, but the door opened and it's the wonderful McAllister. So McAllister comes in. He's like, are you ready? And she's like, yeah. So she comes in. And then McAllister starts talking about the board and its origins and how initially, and actually before this, he had her sign an agreement, an NDA, so she couldn't talk about it. So back when there was a crash in the stock market, one of the board members actually I think he was the head of the bank at the time. He had a stroke. He was fully incapacitated. And his wife ran that bank. But no one knew it except for the board. But the decisions that she made are what allowed that bank to get out of the slump and thrive. And so as a thank you, the board members did sexual favors for her. And so that became the initiation. So each board member will get an opportunity for 1 minute to touch her however they would like. They can't penetrate her as far as like with their actual dick. Like they can't do that. That's only for, Royce to do. But they can touch her. They can put their mouth on her wherever. All of that. They have a minute. So now she's freaking out because she's like, wait a minute, I didn't know it was going to be all of this. And so he's like, you can leave right now. He's like, you don't have to stay. He's like, you can't tell anyone about what happens. He was like, but you can leave. He was like, but if you stay, then you are committing yourself to, Royce and to this board. And she was like, okay. And I kind of got it. I was like, you know what? That's a heck of a thing. Here's the thing. Her family's broke. Okay? There's no money. And at this point, it's like, you know what? Let's just dive in. We might as well do what we need to do for... It's not really for her family at this point. It is because she wants Royce. And so if that's what this is going to take to get him, she'll do it. So she said, okay, but I have a stipulation. And he's like, what do you mean? There's no stipulation. This is it. And she's like, no, I have a stipulation. The only way I'll do it is if you make Royce your proxy. And McAllister flew into a fit. He's like, no. He's like, I am the head member of this board. I deserve a right. And he was flipping out. And she's like, it's either that or no deal. And he's like, you don't hold all the cards here. I do. She's like, no, I think I do. She goes, either because you don't want to go out there and tell everyone that Royce is no longer going to be a part of the board. That means this party was for nothing. And we know you're not going to go out there and do that. So again, if you want me to go through with this, you need to make him your proxy. And so he was like, I'll agree to that if you agree to move in to the estate. And she was like, well, no, I can't do that. I got to help my family out. I'm getting their finances together. And he's like, I'll get him a financial advisor and I'll keep you updated as often as you want. But those are the terms. And it was funny because it was like he had her by the balls. There's nothing she's like, yeah. She's like, okay, I'll do it. So now we're starting the process. So, of course, the first person that, is able to touch her and lick her is Royce. Then each one of the members gets a minute. And one of the board members, whose name is Richard, which is the dad of the guy that she gave a hand job to at the homecoming back in the day, he starts to eat her out and he's about to make her come. And Royce was about to lose it, but he couldn't. It was like he's caught in this situation where he knows with his dad he can't show too much that he wants Maris, because then his dad is going to know, if what you want, I'll take it from you. He'll have leverage over him. So he was just staring at that the sand that does the time. He's just looking at the timer like, oh my god, let's just let this thing hurry up. So thankfully the timer stops before she actually comes, because she was moaning loud and everything. So thankfully the timer hit and she was done. So then, of course, they come to the part where Royce has to actually screw her in front of them. And he whispers in her ear, he's like, I'm going to make this really quick. He's like, this isn't our first time. I'll make this up to you. So he does it really quick. And then it's all over. Everyone leaves. McAllister's still there. And he, of course, has to mess with Royce. And he's like, gee, son, you couldn't even last that long, you know? And he's like, whatever. He just didn't say anything. So as soon as McAllister left, he's like, are you okay? She's like, I'm okay, but I don't want to talk about it. So when they leave out of the room, she goes into she goes out, and Alice is right outside waiting, because this is like in a kind of, it's not a, I guess it was kind of like the dining area, because this is at the home, which is where the event is. So, because she was laid out on a table. So, it was right outside, because when they came out, they were in the kitchen. And Alice is waiting for her, and Alice like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And she's like, I'm fine. I'm okay. And she's like, good. She's like, I wasn't when I had to come out. And she's like, hopefully you'll do this for the next person. You'll be there for them. And the first thought that hits Maris's mind is, I don't think I can deal with Royce having to like go down on another woman. Like, I don't like this thought. But she's like, you know what? I can't deal with this. I will deal with these thoughts and these feelings at another time. I can't do it. She's like, I'm just going to go and enjoy the party. So Royce lets her know. He goes, listen, I got to do a little mingling. He was like, and then I'll meet you outside in the, there's a garden maze in the back of the estate. He's like, I'll meet you back there. So she's like, all right. So on her way back, she gets stopped by her mom. She gets stopped by another one of the girls from high school that wasn't friends with her. But now, of course, everyone's her friend because she's with the whole Hale. So everyone loves her now. So finally she makes her way. She actually gets stopped a third time by Richard, the guy that was from high school. And he's like, wow, you look different, And he's like, well, how did you and Royce, how did that whole thing happen? And just as he said that, his dad walks up. And his dad's like, hi, how are you? And so, he does the introduction. And it's so funny because in her brain, she's like, oh, my gosh, this man was just going down on me. And we're sitting up here acting like we've never known each other. This is just strange. So she finally makes her way to the maze in the back of the house, the garden, and Royce is there, and he gets down on one knee and he proposes to her. He cries because she is happy. And he tells her the speech again. He's like, pretty much, I know all the things I told you that I'm going to do. He's like, but when this is over, he was like, just promise me that you'll give us a real chance at having something. And she's like, okay, I will. So he goes back and she stays back a little bit. They did a little couple pics or whatever. And then when she's on her way back, she hears moaning. And so she looks and she sees in the garden, because this is a massive garden maze. It's a maze, so it's huge. She sees Vance and she sees Alice giving him a blowjob. And he's filming it. And he's talking filthy to her. And he's telling her that he's like, if you act like you don't like it, I'll put it on Instagram. Everyone will see you. And so, of course, she just takes him deeper in her mouth. And she was floored because she was like, oh, my gosh. Like, she's screwing Vance? Like, what the hell? So she runs back. And he's sitting there. And he's like, Royce is like, are you okay? What's going on? And she's like, I'm okay. I'm okay. It's just, oh my gosh, but she couldn't tell him.